The Wespenra Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The Second Level of Learning. http://wespenry.com. Part 4, The Fork in the Road: Humanity's Future. Humanity's Future, Paper Number 1. Life After the Nanosecond, Part 1. The Dark Road Towards Extinction. By Wespenra, Sunday, October 21, 2012. Revised, Saturday, December 15, 2012 at 11:10 a.m. http://wespenry.com. Part 4. 7.2. Can the fire burn out? The difference between the real heaven and hell, and what does Guardians of the Living Library really means? Now the reader understands why the Syrians can't just clone human bodies and start using them, and with that being able to cross the universe while still being able to stay in the dimensions of matter. They don't inhabit the divine fire. So they need to count on us to help them get access to the Orion Empire and the heart of the Mother in order to become the kings of the universe. Lord Ea had no problem with transferring the fires from the Mother Universe and down the dimensions, because he too has the divine fire, being the direct son of the Mother Goddess. But the Syrians are not divine. This makes Lord Ea our brother by default, on a soul level. Now, let us look at what would happen if the gates to the Khaa, the Orion Empire, and the connection with the Mother Universe were closed on us. Here I need to add something Robert Morningsky included in one of his audio tapes, The Hidden Pearl 9. He said that some beings of the 96% dark universe are seriously thinking about forbidding humans from having access to their universe because of the way we behave. They don't want us there. What they are talking about is that they would rather have us live under the illusion that the 4% universe is all there is and not letting us get free and explore the rest. So, this is another reason why we have to change our ways very quickly, because if we don't, we lose our support. Humankind has a destiny, as it seems, and this destiny is as divine as can be, so let's not lose it. It looks like we were not only meant to be emissaries of the goddess, but also the guardians of the living library. We will be the library cards to this new living library. Through us, when we have gained our abilities, star beings can get access to the living library and learn something new, but only on the level which they can responsibly handle the information. So, ultimately, when a star being comes to Earth and gets access through us, they can learn through nature what they need to learn. We can help them evolve through matter, even if they themselves can't enjoy it in the same way we do. Isn't that a divine mission, if anything? Unfortunately, as things are now, the Syrian Alliance are banned from Orion, so the living library won't help them in that regard. Therefore, they have little respect for all living here on Earth, and has taught their minions, the global elite, the same disgusting manners. So, should the Syrians get another chance to come to the Orion Empire and get access to the Angle, the goddess upper dimensions? The Syrians indeed want access to the heavens, but on their terms. They have become so proud that they refuse to acknowledge the goddess as the prime creator, because that would not only put them second, but equal to all other star races, once they get to heaven. This is unacceptable to them, seeing themselves as heirs of the universe. They want to be the gods of all other star races in the universe, who then will get down on their knees and obey them and do as they are told. This, of course, is why they say that God is masculine. They have already postulated that in the future this will be true, and they want to put out the idea that it already is so to solidify the thought. And as we know, if we put enough energy and intention in a certain direction, it's bound to come true, unless someone else put an equal or bigger quantity of counter-intentions towards that goal, or better yet, set another goal that nullifies the original goal. This is being done, and is a major part of the wars in heaven. Who is going to get control over the universe? Can we really blame the inhabitants of the 96% if they don't want us in the heavens the way we are acting out right now? It makes more sense now, doesn't it? The archenemy of the goddess, the Syrians, are fire riders. They will ride our fire right into the Angle, and together we pollute it. If Heaven's Gate closes and humanity we can no longer access these realms. For an individual to get past the gate, they must prove that they are pure from Syrian influence, and by behavior show that they are not going to pollute the divine realms of the goddess. It gets harder and harder to get in. But back to question number 2. The goddess did send out her angels to teach both mankind and other star races trapped in the Syrian 4% universe how to get to heaven, but were also meant to work for all being in the universe. Just because beings are not trapped by star races like the Syrians, it doesn't mean they know everything. Just like us, they are in different stages of development, physically and spiritually. However, the plan didn't work as expected. Just like here on Earth, enlightened beings have been rejected and attacked, and their message has been twisted and distorted. This led to a change in plans. The new divine plan is to have 12 living libraries activated in the universe, so that those who are willing to learn look for the answers themselves instead of having angelic beings giving it to them, or giving them hints. This way, the responsibility to evolve to the heavens comes on the individuals themselves. A brilliant idea. However, the 12 libraries are interconnected in the sense that they all must work in unison to accomplish their goal. It is too much for one species, such as mankind, to hold the vibrations necessary to guard all the information. Hence, we have help from other beings on 11 other worlds across the universe. There is apparently one more living library in this galaxy, and one in the Andromeda galaxy, about 2.2 million light-years away. Where the rest are, I have no idea at this time. Star beings, living in the 4% dimensions can still learn how to get access to the void, but it's much harder without the living libraries. We, as human beings, have a responsibility to get this library working by raising our frequency enough to hold the position as library cards. Now you also see why star beings who are watching us find it extremely important to keep the living library intact and prevent Earth from being destroyed. The good news is that due to how the multiverse works, we create our own reality. Individuals can break out of an ingrown pattern and create a different reality by changing their belief systems and their thought patterns. The multiverse will adjust to all our changing paradigms. This way, if enough individuals start vibrating on a higher frequency, we create a new Earth, which does not allow the lower frequencies, emitted by the Syrians and their technology, to coexist with us. This way, we can still be the card holders, without having all humanity following the same path. But it doesn't come easy. This is why the most important thing we can do is to work on ourselves. I can't stress this enough. If you work on yourself, you also work for the benefit of humanity and the rest of the 100% universe, because you bring others up there with you by their matching your frequency and your intentions. When your frequency vibrates in alignment with truth, other people who have the ability to feel it, will tune in and start having epiphanies. This galaxy, our own Milky Way, has 2 major portals. One is in the galactic center, the womb of the mother, where stars were and still are born, and one is in Orion. There are a lot of other ones, like in Ursa Major, but the galactic center and Orion's belt are the 2 important ones. When Nekh.tt, the Queen, noticed that this infamous, and much feared, wolfen/reptilian race from Sirius in their quest to conquer the universe came close to Orion, and more importantly, Peshmetan, the 9th passageway, she had to act. This is why the contract between Orion and Ansirian King of Kings had to be written and the business marriage between the two needed to be done. By doing so, the Queen, from her position in the physical universe, could keep an eye on the overlords. This didn't work as planned, because her husband, the King of Kings of Sirius, in secret used his son, Lord Enlil, to invade Earth, and his Aryan wife had apparently been manipulated by him, and did not report back to the Queen. So one could say the takeover of Earth happened due to a conspiracy between Enki, Ninhursag, Enlil, and Ninlil, Enlil's Aryan consort. Then, what is hell? Is this a real place? First of all, if we really believe something to be real, we can manifest it. A Christian who strongly believes in the biblical heaven and hell can manifest both through their belief system. That doesn't necessarily make it real, but more like the worlds that Q is manifesting in our example above from Star Trek. The discarnate fire may experience either or, depending on where they think they deserve to go, but eventually the illusion will shatter, and the fire will realize that it was not true. However, there is another hell that is definitely real, and although you don't burn in an eternal fire, it is almost as devastating. This hell is not yet created, but is more or less in the making. After the splitting of the worlds, those who will follow the Syrians downhill into the tyrannical machine society and beyond will cause so much havoc that the mother and decent star beings in general will create a hell dimension for the Syrians to live in, where they can play out their power game without involving and affecting anybody else except those who agree with them. Those humans who continue to wittingly or unwittingly agree with their alliance will end up there as well. It's not a hell dimension per se, but a locked-in dimension from where there is no escape. Hell is something the Syrians and those who dwell there will just simply create for themselves. Another sober reason why it's not a good idea to stay asleep and just go with the Syrian flow. 7.3. The 4% universe plus the 96% universe equals the 100% universe. So what is our first step here to get out of the trap? The first thing is to raise our own vibrations, and part of being able to do that is to start disagreeing with the Syrians and their system, which is nothing but a control system from beginning to end. We all are part of the system from when we wake up in the morning until we go to sleep in the evening, 365 days a year. All that has to go, so we need to claim our own sovereignty and become multidimensional, which ultimately means multidimensional in the KHAA, but we automatically also become multi-D in the 4%, now being able to perceive 100% of the universe. The DNA exists as a blueprint inside the millions of fires that make up the soul, the big fire. The divine human template is reproduced through sex, but the fire waiting to inhabit the fetus has the ability to shape the fetus relatively freely by manipulating its DNA. Normally the baby grows up, looking somehow like its parents, but in many ways it doesn't as well. So we can see how the fire to a certain degree, both before the fetus was born, and throughout the lifetime shapes and reshapes the body. If we had the knowledge, we could basically reshape the body at any time to look how we would want it to look. Today, without this knowledge, our bodies normally are just a reflection of how we feel, emotionally. A happy person has a healthy, often attractive body, while a deeply depressed person transmutes some of these emotions on the body. This is also often how we create our own diseases. However, the Syrians have limited us significantly, so we rarely know what we are doing, and why. We are so heavily manipulated that black almost literally has become white and vice versa. They feed us with opposites and tell us that those are the truths. It's very clever, because if someone starts seeing through it and teach her the truth and it's the opposite from what the majority have been taught, almost no one is bound to believe him. There are a million examples of this, but the most serious one is the myth about the 4% universe. The Syrians tell you through their minions, the physicists, astronomers, and astrophysicists, that the universe we see in the telescopes is all there is. There are certain galaxies out there with stars and planets etc., and in between there is a large amount of empty space. We say that this empty space is the majority of the universe and creates enormous distances between the stars. In fact, the Syrians have turned off our DNA to such an extent that we can more or less only perceive 5 senses, which is the third dimension. The rest of the DNA is dormant. If we only see 4% of the universe, where is the other 96%? Yes, we call it dark matter and dark energy, but is it really dark? No, only with our perceptions it is. Think of it like this: you stand in a room full of furniture, paintings, TVs, and a lot of other things. You can see it all very clearly. Then you turn off the light in the room and everything turns dark. Then you lighten up 4% of the furniture and material things in the room but let the rest remain dark. Does that mean that the other 96% of the furniture in the room don't exist anymore? Of course not, it's just that you can't see them with your eyes, which only perceives darkness except with the 4% of the room which were lit up. This is exactly what the 96% and the 4% of the universe are about. In reality, all 100% of the universe is there if you could only perceive it. The 96% looks just like the 4% and they blend together into 100%. Then you can imagine the vastness of the universe. But the Syrians wanted to create this mystery and this darkness to create the illusion that we are extremely isolated, and there is not much hope to reach the stars. This has helped keeping us trapped here. Once we realize this and the grid and the quarantine are removed, and the Syrians' mind control is losing its grip over us, we will see the universe the way it really looks. If we think it's vast now, it's nothing compared to how it really is. And the distance between star systems are not huge at all. However, because of the vastness of the whole universe, stargates or nano travel are required to travel long distances. People have asked me if souls can die, and what happens with them when a universe has completed its cycle. According to my knowledge, souls can't die, or more correctly, fires cannot burn out. And there is no space weapon which can kill the soul and terminate it forever. However, there are weapons which can paralyze the soul and make it unconscious for some time, but the fire can't be destroyed once it's created. Still, there is one case scenario that we want to avoid to the best of our abilities. Space wars, both those who existed in the past and those who still exist, are more often than not fought in other dimensions. Sometimes the space soldiers have hybrid bodies they use in the combats, and sometimes the wars are fought between onto energetics, or a mix of them both. To kill a hybrid body is not considered a big deal. When a star race has evolved to this point where they can participate in space wars, losing their spacesuit is not a big deal, and losing a spaceship is collateral damage. However, in serious wars, the weapons used are not particularly aiming primarily at the spaceships or the hybrid bodies but at a person's avatar. If the avatar/light body is shot to pieces, the fires that make up the big fire, the soul, dissolve as well and start floating in space without any vehicle to hang on to. Apparently, regardless if the fire is an onto energetic or inhabiting a physical body, she needs the avatar to navigate the universe. So, if no one is picking up the fire who's lost her avatar, this fire is going to keep floating in space, potentially forever, and eventually the millions of super tiny orbs will dissolve, and the being loses her personality and returns to becoming one with the universe. If, on the other hand, the fire is being picked up, I am sure there are ways to create a new avatar. It was once created by the founders, so technically, it could be done. Still, I'm only guessing this, albeit it's the most logical thing to consider. The chances that the Syrians will use us as space soldiers in the future if we continue working with them are great. And the chances we will end up having our avatars destroyed are also considerable. Doesn't sound very inviting to me. Still, this is most probably what awaits us if we choose the Syrian machine world before our personal freedom. The choice is ours. The reader may think it's an easy choice when all cards are on the table, but it's not as easy as it seems. A person can be all determined not to choose the machine world, but so far, almost all of us do, don't we? We buy our cell phones, computers, TVs, iPods, and all other electronic devices we can think of. One individual may not buy all of the above, but even if we buy and use one or two of them, and use them as a part of being members of the system, or for personal joy, we are choosing the machine world without thinking about it. See how easy it is to just slide into it, without even thinking, and then we sit there pondering, I wonder when the machine world is going to take over? I haven't noticed any of it, so it's probably not going to happen, when in fact it's already happening. Look at all the kids on the street, texting along on their little devices. I see a lot of adults acting the same way. The Syrians are already here, and the invasion has already begun. The more I research, and the more I understand, the way they want us to believe that prophecies are going to play out may all be mis and disinformation. I'll explain what I mean. 8. The second coming is happening now. We keep our minds busy, researching and waiting on Project Blue Beam, spaceships in the sky, the Battle of Armageddon, demonic, alien, invasion, the Antichrist, and the second coming. How about if much of that has already happened, and the rest is happening right now, and we don't even notice. Don't we see tons of reports from people seeing UFOs, Project Blue Beam and its interplaying projects? The Battle of Armageddon may be a metaphor for the war on human consciousness and increasing awareness, which is fought by giving us disinformation, where channeled entities are telling us what to think, although they make very sure that the listeners must make up their own minds and they are really just here to inform and help. Well, if we think about it, no matter how nice they are and how much sense they make, it doesn't matter even if they tell us to make up our own minds. Many of them are convincing enough that we will believe what they are saying, only because they are master manipulators even of emotions. Isn't that true of most channeled information? And what do we recognize in that? That's right. Syrian mentality. These are the alien/demonic forces the prophecies are talking about, and Armageddon may be just the war on consciousness and not a physical war. So, according to the Bible, the satanic forces will win the battle of Armageddon, and only the righteous will be selected to go to heaven. This could mean two things, and both would be correct. 1. The Syrians will harvest those whom they think will be a threat to the New World Order, and they will be both Christians. To show people that the prophecies are reliable, they sacrifice the Christians in a fake rapture, which has been the plan all along, and New Agers, who believe in the harvest and in being beamed up to higher densities, or taken off planet in spaceships, which may very well happen to some, although it will be a trap and these people will be killed or manipulated and used in the most horrific plan. And 2. Those who see through all these lies will still have access to the KHAA, heaven, and once again become the guardians of the living library, or return home, to the KHAA dimensions, and stay there, if they so prefer. What about the alien invasion? Surely, we haven't been invaded yet, right? Wrong. I think we have. Just as I've said throughout all these papers in Level 2, aliens travel both in the physical and in the nano world, and so do the Syrians. Some of them travel without bodies, and others with. What about if the invasion is happening by Syrians coming in masses, occupying selected bodies here on Earth? Some of these bodies have been prepared since long by keeping the Nephilim, Pleiadian/Syrian bloodline, pure. Other human bodies have been manipulated over the millennia have been abducted by everything from fairies and gnomes, in the past, to grey aliens, reptilians, Nordics, and the military, in the present, taken to spaceships or down into underground facilities, to have their DNA manipulated and tampered with in order for the Syrian consciousness. Their energies are stronger than ours. So far, to be able to enter without frying the host, the human body. One way of detecting such manipulation seems to be to check the CK levels in the blood. If these are sky high, in actuality high enough to kill a horse, and the person still lives and breathes normally on an everyday basis, the person is most certainly a hybrid. We see this in particular in the Michael Lee Hill case. I am not bluntly suggesting that all these hybrids are going to be used by dark forces, but the majority certainly are, of that I'm quite sure. These manipulated humans will then be hosts for beings of the Syrian alliance. Like I said, some of these hosts have been prepared for ages, and many of them have been possessed by Syrians for the same amount of time, but also people who are not of the Nephilim bloodline have been abducted and manipulated so that it can become a generational thing. If a person was abducted in the 1700s, his or her descendants, all the way up to present time, are probably still pure enough to be used, and by reproduction, more and more people are born to become hosts for these entities. I'm sure they are kept close track of. It is my suspicion that the invasion is now, in present time, an ongoing thing, but is yet to be completed. It looks to me that we are now either living through the tribulation, and the harvest will be later, or we are still in pre-tribulation. According to scripture, the tribulation will last for 7 years, and the Antichrist will reign the last 3.5 or these 7 years. So this means that the Antichrist is still to show up, in whatever shape and form that will be. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person. Perhaps the passing of A.M.E/Nibiru this time around, if such a body is actually existing as described by Sitchin and others, is solidifying the beginning of the tribulation, and the effects of the incoming will last for 7 years. Either way, I start to seriously believe that the second coming is the second coming of the Syrians, only this time it is silent and they are not letting us know like they were in ancient times, when they were worshipped as gods. The King of Kings, who will rule this world in peace for 1,000 years may be Nanner, but more likely, he will choose someone else to be the King of Kings here on earth, perhaps you too or another close relative. At this point in time, the king may not even tell us he is not human, and when his body grows old, the same being will continue reigning in a new body, perhaps as the son to the previous king. We humans may think it's a father-son thing, when in fact, it's the same person inside a new body. Then, when the 1,000 years cycle is over, 1,000 years is nothing for the Syrians, it may be time to invade Orion. We think that peace will bring happiness to the world and that peace is what we all want and need. Well, it shouldn't be, because peace is not what we want if a hidden tyrant is sitting on the world throne. I am not saying we want war either, but peace is what the Syrians wants, because if we, the masses, are at peace, that means we are not rebelling or opposing, we are obedient, peaceful slaves. Thus, the meaning of the King of Kings bringing 1,000 years of peace to the world may just as well mean that a tyrant is creating a peaceful world, where everybody is peacefully obedient. This gives another meaning to the word peace, doesn't it? The machine world is starting to rise out of the ashes from the bird phoenix, which perhaps died in 2008, with the recession and the financial meltdown. Or perhaps we are still waiting for a unifying event and a primary event, which will anchor the new world order in time and space. If so, surely the meltdown was not enough to do so. It remains to be seen. What we've discussed here above is one version of what could be going on behind the scenes, and overall, it seems to me quite plausible. 9. Breaking the endless cycle of reincarnation. We can just as well face it, we are all going to die one day, and our life force will leave the body. So how do we carry the information with us and remember it the next time we reincarnate? What is the use in learning all these things if we are to forget it in the amnesia implant station? We'll see if we can answer these questions to some extent in this section. In the New Age and spiritual movement, people often think we need to reincarnate to eventually evolve to the next level, i.e. the next density or dimension. They believe that we have a lesson or two to learn each lifetime, and it builds up and we become wiser and wiser. The between lives area, BLAT, then becomes a resort where you rest in between incarnation, and mingle and have a happy reunion with dead relatives. Although there seems to be some truth in this, it's not at all the purpose with reincarnation and the BLAT. It's all set up to trap us, like we have discussed in these papers. We don't even necessarily get wiser by accumulating life events that carry over. Because we usually don't remember them, instead they become unresolved and unfinished business which build up ridges of energy around our light body, just to transfer over to the next physical body, which in its turn carries genetic memories from the bloodline, including unresolved issues as well. This creates inner conflicts in individuals, who find themselves having issues in the present lifetime which they can't explain where they come from. Of course, resolved problems and carried over completed learning lessons can be relatively helpful and in a sense helps the person evolve under the circumstances of our earthly existences. But overall, reincarnation is severely halting the evolution of a being, who could, if amnesia hadn't been implemented on them, had learned their lesson many times faster. But aside from these arguments, it's all a trap and can't be beneficial for any of us. However, the only reason the Syrians can keep us trapped in their system, which does not only include the earthly system, but expands out to include the afterlife as well, is because we are ignorant of what they're doing. Once we are aware, their system falls apart and can no longer be sustained. And they can't keep us trapped here, either, if we refuse to do what they want us to do. When we die, one of several things, or a mix of them, can happen to an individual. One scenario is that the deceased is being helped with the crossover by their so-called spirit guide, or guides, who lead them to the tunnel, which sucks them into the light. The deceased often feels joy and increased awareness during this process, relieved from not having the physical body with all its programming to carry around anymore. On the other side of the tunnel awaits them either deceased friends and relatives, or Jesus, who will carry them further to heaven. Others, on rare occasion, have told a darker story about going to hell, seeing demons and dark spirits. It seems pretty much that people go where their belief system take them. If they have very strong religious beliefs, for example, they may go to a place that corresponds to that. In part, they make it up themselves, but there are versions of the afterlife which already corresponds with Jesus, the devil, Mother Mary, or whatever it may be. Still, it's only make-believe, and the person ends up being recycled anyway. Although exactly where people go after body death may differ, they all have one thing in common: the tunnel, leading to a bright light on the other side. The Syrians want everybody to go through the tunnel. Whatever people want to be or do, and whom they want to meet, can to a certain degree be arranged, but the common denominator is the tunnel. Few are those, of all humans who have died over and over again, who escaped the tunnel. Even if no spirit guide is there to greet them and they are all alone, they almost always find their way to the tunnel. Only times I know of that they don't is when they don't realize they are dead and hover around the earth plane in the astral, confused and lonely. Others don't want to leave because they hang on to something, be it friends, relatives, or material things, they don't want to let go. But in the end, whether it takes a week, in our terms, or 1,000 years, the spirit sooner or later finds her way to the tunnel and is absorbed by the light. Why is that? How come even lonely spirits, without guides, are drawn to the tunnel? I think the answer is relatively simple. First of all, the tunnel may have an electromagnetic pull to it, which pulls the spirit in, but also, if a spirit is lost and confused, finding out that they actually are dead, they want to go somewhere. When everything is dark around them, or hazy at best, a tunnel with a bright light may seem like a good idea. The alternative seems less attractive. And when the spirit gets closer, she is sucked in like into a vacuum cleaner, which it basically is, a gigantic mega vacuum cleaner, and the rest goes by itself and the spirit can only go along with the ride. The tunnel with the light is how the Syrians keep us trapped through the afterlife, until a new body is found that we can get recycled into. They know that if they can only get us to enter the tunnel, they have us for yet another ride, there is no way back. Once in there, we are at their mercy, there is very little we can do, it's like being blown into a balloon, where after somebody ties the string around the opening. Whatever is in there stays in there until the Syrians, with help from technology, shoots us down into a new body. The existence in the afterlife, if we are to believe the 7,000 plus witnesses in Michael Norton's books, who from regression therapy were able to tell a similar story of what happens from when we die until we get recycled, is not necessarily negative. The great majority of case studies show that people have quite a good time seeing old familiar faces and having a chance to rest and feel healthy, and at ease. If so, all is fine and dandy thus far, but those who take this route are definitely going to be recycled again, although there allegedly are those who stay in the afterlife for quite some time, or so they think, because time is different there. Now, from knowing what we know, we have three choices as I see it. The first one we have already discussed, but here they are, all three of them. 1. We go towards the light and into the tunnel and get trapped in the recycling process once more. 2. We avoid the light and the tunnel altogether and take a new body without going through the Syrian implant station in the blat. 3. We turn our back to the light and hurry up heading in the opposite direction, out through a hole in the grid and escape out into the universe. We covered number 1, so let's take a look at number 2. This option is of course available to us, and if a Syrian spirit guide is coming to guide us, we tell them we don't want to be part of their entrapment system anymore. The guide may be nice about it and try to manipulate us for a while, and with all this knowledge, we will think it's pretty transparent, I'm sure, but we persist. The guide will leave us alone, because they can't go against the law of free will or they'll be in deep trouble. They will let us go. Then, at our convenience, we take a new body and reincarnate again, this time with full memory of our past life, although not necessarily the ones before that, as these are hidden under veils of amnesia from previous visitation to the implant station. When we're born into baby bodies, memories will not return until we reach a certain age, I would think around 2 to 5 years old. Some suggest 12 years old, or during adolescence. The reason, perhaps, that we want to take this route is because we want to stay on Earth and be part of creating the new Earth and become guardians of the living library again. Things to look out for. First of all, when we choose to take a new body, we most probably have to fight off non-physical beings, who want the same body we do. Bodies are a scarcity, in spite of 7 billion of them on Earth. There are many non-physicals, who for different reasons want to experience the material worlds. When we go through the tunnel, we get help from the Syrians to make sure we get the body we are supposed to be shot into. Other aspirants are fought off beforehand. Now, when we're not within the system anymore, we have to do the job ourselves. Another thing to be aware of is that our new parents may not welcome our ability to remember our past existence and wave it off as fantasies. As we grow older, our friends, and the school system are going to do the same thing. In an environment where we are constantly invalidated for our past life memories and our relatively extraordinary knowledge, we may think we are the ones who are crazy and start believing what they're saying and begin to suppress our memories. This is a serious threat to ourselves, because if that happens, we may once again become trapped in the system. Most likely, however, if we are born without amnesia implants, sooner or later in life we are going to realize that what we are remembering is actually real, because we're going to be drawn towards information which helps us revalidate who we are. Lastly, we have the option to find a hole in the grid and just disappear. No one is likely going to stop you, but if they do, it will most possibly again be in form of spirit guides, or even dead relatives, who are going to tell you how wonderful it is in the afterlife. Just because it comes from someone we have loved, and still love, it could be hard to resist, but then we need to keep in mind what we know. Once we are outside the grid, we are going to see the universe in a new light, free to explore the different dimensions, and now we're talking about perceiving 100% of the universe, not only 4%. By just thinking a thought, we can move from one place, or dimension, to another. Things to look out for. The only problem I know of when choosing this option is when we run into other star beings. At a first glance, it may be hard to know if they are benevolent or not, although they all have a signature to them which will tell us if we're perceptive enough, which we should be when out of the trap system, I would think. They may be convincing and act friendly when in fact they are anything but. Best way to find out is to ask if they are of the light and if they endorse the divine feminine. If they say yes, we should be relatively safe. If we're still uncertain, we can either ask them more questions, or just say we want to be left alone, until a new opportunity shows up when meeting other star beings. We have to remember to respect other civilizations, so if we explore a planet, we need to leave the beings there alone so they can evolve undisrupted, and if the civilization is more advanced, ask for permission to get to know them. If they're friendly, this should not be much of a problem. Time is irrelevant when we travel the stars, so we are not limited by lifetimes. We can browse as long as we want, until we find a place that can be our new home and settle down there. These two last options are the ones I see can help us to get out of the Syrian control system after we have experienced body death. In the meantime, while still in a body here on Earth, and to help raising the vibrations of self and others, a good idea is to disagree being part of the system as much as possible, and perhaps join others who are like-minded. Keep in mind that the solutions are often simple, so simple that we haven't thought about them. Isn't that how life is, after all? What I have suggested here doesn't require more than a decision and an action on our part, and we will be our own masters. It's just a matter of taking the step and do it. All it takes is courage, and the realization that nothing bad will happen if we break our patterns. After all, it's the system which has taught us that it's dangerous to think and act on our own. We just need to understand that it's all a lie in order to keep us trapped. It's called mind games.